It's the MMA mustache here, and with UFC Belgrade just around the corner, I see a lot of people talking about this new co-main event of Jan Blachowicz versus Navajo Stirling. And I see them kind of going back and forth on this prediction of who's going to win this fight, with people thinking that this is a very, very close and hard to predict fight. In this video, I'm going to break down why I don't think that's the case at all. So let's get started straight away. Jan Blachowicz, former light heavyweight champion, first person to beat Israel Adesanya. He's fought literally everybody in that division post John Jones era. John Jones is the fight he didn't have, but he beat Dominic Reyes right after that impressive performance that Dominic Reyes had with John Jones. He's a very good technical striker. You see it against, he outstruck Israel Adesanya and used grappling to beat him. He hung in there with Alex Pereira. He had a very close fight with the current champion, Carlos Ulberg. He had a very close fight with Magomed Ankalaev. This guy knows how to strike. He's got nasty leg kicks. His jab's really good. His pressure when he throws to the body with hooks and then comes over the top is what he seems to catch a lot of his opponents with and kind of hurt them when he flurries forward. He's very good when he's pressuring and coming forward for Jan Blachowicz. He has high fight IQ too, very smart. He's crafty. He knows how to win rounds, not just high fight IQ in the sense of, training and being technical and coming out there and using the tools that you have, but high fight IQ in the sense that he knows when he's down a round, he knows when he's possibly down 2 rounds, he knows when he needs a 10-8. He's very good at making a fight that shouldn't be close very close. What I mean by that is he'll go tit for tat with anyone. He'll make Carlos Ulberg fight at his pace. He'll make Alex Pereira fight at his pace. Even the fight against Bogdan Guskov, he was able to overcome a 10-8 round and still hang in there and get a draw just off of using fight IQ and making those, adapting as the rounds go on. Jan Blachowicz, as the fight goes on, he normally does get a lot better. Also, another thing for Jan Blachowicz is his experience. You're going to see me talk soon about the fact how old he is, but, you have to look at who he's been in there with, how long he's been in there, how many title fights he's had. He's had 5-round fights against guys like Israel Adesanya. He has won the belt, he's defended the belt, he's versed the best of the best of this era. And he's fought, middleweights coming up as well with speed. He's fought guys with more power than him. He's fought killers on the feet. He's fought grapplers. He has the experience. He truly is a seasoned vet that's versed everyone. And he's, for a long part of his career, he's been in the top 15 fighting good opponents too. Now let's have a look at Navajo Stirling. Navajo Stirling, on the other hand, is 10-0, undefeated in mixed martial arts. He trains out of City Kickboxing, which we're going to be talking about soon. He has really good momentum right now. And what I mean by that is not just is he undefeated and winning. I feel like with every new opponent he gets, it's a gradual step up and a gradual increase in opponents and how good they are and what sort of challenges they're going to provide him. And I like that. You're not jumping straight into the deep end and seeing if you can swim. You're slowly working your way up to those bigger challenges. He's learning on the fly. He got into the UFC when he was 6-0, I believe, maybe even 5-0. Knockout on the Dana White Contender Series. And now he's the first couple of fights in the UFC, he sort of coasted to a decision and you could see he was getting his bearings about him. Everyone was shooting at his hips, trying to take him down because he fights out of City Kickboxing. He's a good kickboxer. He has a really good kickboxing resume as well. But he was able to get past that by good momentum. What I was trying to say is that he started off with these rough fights with people taking him down and making them close decisions and against opponents that were kind of not very formidable. They're kind of cans in the light heavyweight division. But as he increased his opponents, Bellato, and then to his most recent performance against Earl Kutilaba, I like the step up in opponents for him. I like the momentum that's been giving, that he's been having because of that. Really good activity as well. He's a very, since joining the UFC, he's been, last year, I believe, he's had 3 or 4 fights each year. So that's something that's going to help for him too. I think momentum does play a long shot, especially when it's a short notice fight. I like that for Navajo Stirling. It's short notice. For Jan, it's been a while since he's been in there now, but for Navajo, he had a fight the last couple of months. Crafty striking. What I mean by this is that, Navajo, he trains out of a striking gym where arguably some of the best strikers in our sport have been produced from. So it makes sense that he would be a good striker. But a lot of the strikers you see come out of City Kickboxing, they're very technical, and they sometimes have low volume because of it, or they have a go-to weapon like Carlos Ulberg with his left hook. It's a go-to weapon. What I like for Navajo is his crafty striking. I like how it's a leg kick, then it's a straight, then it's a jab, then it's a 1-2, then it's a hook. He mixes it up to the body a lot too. That's something you don't see a lot of these guys do in the higher weight classes, is mix it up to the body. Navajo Stirling throws combinations. He'll throw one to the body and then come over the top. And it kind of looks slow at a sense as well. It kind of he's one of these guys that it looks like he's fighting gassed constantly, sort of in a similar to Dricus du Plessis at middleweight. Sometimes he seems quite labored and slow, but he can go the 3 rounds. And this is only a 3-round fight. But I like his striking. I like how it changes. I like the last fight against Cutelaba that he made the read. Cutelaba was dipping and spamming takedowns. So all of a sudden, the knee was one of his big weapons. The knee to the body and the knee to the head. I like that he's more than happy to clinch. And a big thing for Navajo Stirling that I've got here as well is he sticks to the game plan. He goes out there and he does not throw too much. He does not overthrow. He does not look for the knockout, even though he knows that he has this knockout power. He doesn't always look for the kill, which, for some people, they see that as boring, but I like the fact he's sticking to his game plan. I like the fact he doesn't put himself in danger unless he needs to. And I also like the fact for Navajo Stirling, he's not afraid to wrestle with people. He knows that wrestling is a two-way street. It doesn't matter whether you're shooting the takedown or defending it. Cardio is going to come into question. You cannot wrestle, especially in these higher weight classes, for the entire fight without getting tired, without needing to take breaks, which is what we saw with Ion Cutelaba. The moment Cutelaba engaged in a wrestling exchange, Navajo simply defended it, shucked him off, and wrestled back towards him, looked for his own single legs to force, Ion Cutelaba to have to wrestle back and get tired. I think that was Navajo's game plan. I think he stuck to that perfectly because they know that Cutelaba can sometimes be a one-round fighter, and we saw Cutelaba, fold in the second round because of that. So those are the sort of positives I take away from Navajo Stirling. Now let's actually get into why Navajo Stirling wins. Why do I think this is going to be a shutout? Why am I so confident that Navajo Stirling goes out there and beats Jan Blachowicz? There's a few things. And first, let me just say, I'm predicting Navajo to get a second round KO over Jan Blachowicz. I think as the fight goes on, I think Navajo's going to open up more. And I don't know what version of Jan we're going to see. So I am picking Navajo by finish. But I could also see this looking similar to the Carlos Ulberg fight, where it's a battle of leg kicks, or Jan landing the leg kicks and Navajo landing the jab. And it's kind of like, how do we score this? But I think Navajo's going to... I think he's going to push past. I think because of his activity, I think he's going to be a lot more active in there. I think he's going to have higher output, higher volume. And there's nothing for him to lose in this fight too. If Navajo loses to Jan Blachowicz, it's short notice. It's back to square one. Having your first loss to Jan Blachowicz is not a bad thing. We saw that happen to Israel Adesanya as well when he tried to go up and take a fight. So there's no shame in losing to Jan Blachowicz. So there's no real pressure on Navajo. Whereas Jan Blachowicz, it's kind of like, this is kind of the end for him. We need to see where he's at and how much he's been declining so that we can know whether he's going to continue to be a top 10 guy or even hang around the UFC at all. So the activity for Navajo, I think, leans a massive favor to him. I believe this is going to be his third fight in 5 months. He hasn't taken any damage in any of those fights. In no fight in the UFC or in Navajo's career has he even been rocked, let alone dropped. This guy has a solid chin. And for as much as people say his striking sometimes looks labored and his hands come low, his chin is very good too. Jan Blachowicz, it's been a while since we've seen that Polish power really put someone out. He hurt Bogdan Guskov with the combination, but he wasn't able to drop him and finish. Well, he wasn't able to finish him. It's been a while since we've seen him hurt someone with that power. So I don't think Jan relying on knockout power, if Navajo maybe gets, his striking defense isn't as good as it should be, I don't think Jan should be looking for that KO blow to, I hope he's not investing too much in that. This is going to be somewhat of a fight on the feet as well. As you can see on the bullet points here, I have Jan doesn't wrestle anymore. And what I've noticed is since the Alex Pereira fight, afterwards he pulled out, Jan Blachowicz pulled out of a fight against Alexander Rakic because of a shoulder surgery. Since that second shoulder surgery, we've seen him fight Carlos Ulberg and we've seen him fight Bogdan Guskov. In none of those fights did he try to use his wrestling. And I think if we're being honest, there is no way Jan, the crafty vet that he is with the high IQ that he has, there's no way he would have gone into a Carlos Ulberg fight who is predominantly a kickboxer from City Kickboxing and think to himself, you know what, I'm not going to wrestle this guy. Why would he do that when we saw that he wrestled against Israel Adesanya to beat Israel Adesanya? So now fighting someone out of the same gym, you're going to have a different game plan. I think what happened is he didn't wrestle against Bogdan either. I think because of the surgeries he's been going through, the injuries he's been going through, it becomes a lot harder to wrestle with those, background injuries going on. It hurts your longevity. And when you're already 43 years old, you might be worried about looking for those takedowns, worried about looking to wrestle, because in this division, or in this fight, Jan is only going to have 3 rounds to beat Navajo Stirling. Does he want to risk one of those rounds where Navajo's doing more on the feet, but Jan gets a takedown and doesn't do much with it? And how do they score that? We saw what happened with that against Ankalaev, and they ended up giving it to Ankalaev. We saw that happen with Jan over Alex Pereira, and they ended up giving the fight to Alex Pereira, even though Jan was predominantly on top of him, controlling the fight. So Jan doesn't wrestle anymore. I don't think it's I don't think it's just because he's forgotten the skill. I believe ongoing injuries are causing that to happen. So I think this fight's going to play out on the feet. I think it's either going to be a war with Navajo kind of, forcing the pace on him, or even Jan forcing the pressure on Navajo. I've noticed that Navajo backing up, he sometimes can get clipped from fighters that put pressure on him. So maybe that'll be Jan's approach. But either way, I think it's going to be a stand-up striking fight, pure striking. And I think that's going to favor Navajo Stirling. Another point I've got there is it's only 3 rounds. As I said before, Jan really likes to build into these 4 rounds, 5 rounds fights, and that's really where he thrives, where he can make his reads. And he may not be the quicker guy with his age and his and slowing down and being on the decline, but he still has his high IQ and he's able to make more reads and implement that into his game plan, helping him win the fight. He's only going to have 3 rounds to do this. Not only is he going to only have 3 rounds, he hasn't had the right preparation for this fight either, because he's training for Bogdan Guskov, who is a completely different fighter than Navajo Stirling. And although he might be a striker himself, Jan would have taken so much away from that first fight with Bogdan and expected it to play out similar. He would have been thinking to himself, I'm going to fight how I fought in the 3rd round to make those adjustments so that I win the first 2 against Bogdan. Navajo's a completely different fighter. For Navajo, you can argue that it's short notice for him as well. But the thing that I like for Navajo is City Kickboxing has already game planned for Jan Blachowicz 3 times. The first time was Israel Adesanya. They got that wrong. The second time was Carlos Ulberg. They made the adjustments. Carlos was way more out of range and forced Jan to bring the fight to him. That's how he was able to win, deny the takedowns. Well, there weren't any takedowns, but if there were, I'm sure that's what they had. They were game planning for. So Carlos Ulberg was able to win that. The third fight, or the third time they're now planning for Jan, is with Navajo here. So it's not like there is new territory for Jan Blachowicz. They've game planned for this guy before, and you're dumb if you think Navajo wasn't in that room, wasn't in that gym at the same time. You're dumb if you think he wasn't being used as a body against Israel Adesanya for a light heavyweight body. You're dumb if you think he wasn't in the training camp for Carlos Ulberg. Of course he was. This guy knows Jan Blachowicz's game inside and out. He's got youth on his side. Jan's got plenty of injuries. Plus he's 43 years of age. Plus he's coming off a knee surgery he just had in April. So that was 2 or 3 months ago. Like, how's he going to look on those legs now that this is happening? He's got a very nasty leg kick in Jan, but the thing I like for Navajo is if you're training at City Kickboxing, you have seen the look of a leg kick plenty of times. That's not, Joe Rogan likes to tell us how new the leg kick is. At City Kickboxing, that's their bread and butter. That's the first thing you learn before you throw a jab. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think all of the advantages lean towards Navajo Stirling in this fight. I think he's going to be a very clear winner here. I understand why he's the betting favorite. And I think a lot of people who are going back and forth on this fight online aren't quite looking at it through the right lens. I understand that it's short notice for Navajo, but we have to remember that Jan's 43 and he's clearly declining in his career. Navajo is on the way up. This is a crossroads fight. This is a fight Navajo Stirling should win. I'm taking him by 2nd round KO. But this is why I think Navajo Stirling beats Jan Blachowicz, and I don't think it'll be close. Thank you for watching.